Good evening, my friend. Welcome. Tonight, there is nowhere you need to be. Nothing you need to finish. Nothing you need to solve. The day has already asked enough of you. Now it is time to simply rest. As you settle into your bed, allow your body to grow a little heavier with each quiet breath. Outside, imagine the world becoming still. The wind has softened. The trees sway gently beneath a peaceful night sky. Somewhere in the distance, a train gives one last quiet whistle before disappearing into the darkness. Tonight, we will travel together to a forgotten little mountain town known as Pine Hollow. A place where time moves slowly, where every letter carries a memory, and where an old post office still keeps watch beneath towering pine trees. So close your eyes. Take one slow breath and let the story begin. The road into Pine Hollow. The first pale light of morning rested gently across the northern mountains. Mist drifted slowly between the tall pine trees, softening every hill and every quiet path, until the whole valley seemed wrapped inside a gentle dream. Far below, a narrow road wound through the forest like a faded ribbon, disappearing now and then beneath branches that had watched over Pine Hollow for generations. The air carried the comforting scent of pine needles, damp earth, and yesterday's rain. Somewhere in the distance, a woodpecker tapped patiently against an old cedar tree. A nearby creek whispered over smooth stones, never rushing, never hurrying. It simply flowed as it always had. The little town of Pine Hollow was just beginning to wake up. Thin curls of smoke rose from stone chimneys. Kitchen windows glowed with warm golden light. Somewhere, someone had already placed a kettle upon the stove. Fresh bread would soon be baking. Coffee would soon be poured into heavy ceramic mugs. And before anyone else arrived, before the general store unlocked its front door, before the school bell echoed through the valley, one man would already be walking toward the oldest building in town. His name was Arthur Bell. For nearly 40 years, he had opened the little post office every single morning. Not because anyone expected perfection, not because someone was watching, but because some promises quietly become part of who we are. Arthur believed that every letter deserved a warm welcome. Every parcel deserved careful hands. Every visitor deserved a smile. Even on the quietest mornings. Especially on the quietest mornings. Arthur Bell always arrived a few minutes before sunrise. not because he needed the extra time, and not because anyone expected him to. It had simply become part of the gentle rhythm of his life. Each morning, he walked the same narrow path from his little white cottage to the post office. The path curved beneath tall ponderosa pines whose branches whispered softly whenever the morning breeze wandered through them. Some mornings, a curious squirrel would pause along the fence, holding perfectly still as Arthur passed. Other mornings, a pair of blue jays argued cheerfully from the highest branches, filling the quiet valley with familiar voices. Arthur smiled every time. He never hurried them. This was their morning, too. His leather boots made a comforting crunch against the gravel path. The sound had hardly changed in 40 years. Step after steady step, a slow, dependable rhythm, almost like the ticking of an old clock that had long ago forgotten the meaning of rushing. The morning air felt wonderfully cool. It carried the clean scent of pine resin, damp moss, and the faint sweetness of wildflowers hidden beside the trail. As Arthur reached the small wooden bridge crossing Hollow Creek, he paused, just as he always did. The water below flowed quietly over smooth gray stones. Tiny ripples caught the first hints of sunlight, making the creek sparkle like scattered pieces of polished glass. A trout drifted lazily beneath the surface. Dragonflies hovered above the reeds. Somewhere downstream, frogs greeted the new day with soft, patient voices. Arthur rested both hands upon the weathered railing. He took one slow breath, then another. The valley always seemed to breathe with him, never demanding, never expecting, only welcoming. He believed every morning deserved to be noticed, not because it was extraordinary, but because ordinary mornings often became our most treasured memories. After another peaceful moment, Arthur continued toward the center of Pine Hollow. The town was still asleep. The bakery remained dark. The general store's curtains were closed. The little church stood quietly on the hill, its white steeple slowly catching the growing light of dawn. Only one building waited patiently for Arthur. The post office. It had stood on the corner of Maple Street for nearly 70 years. Its wooden porch creaked gently in the changing seasons. Its red-painted door had faded beneath countless summers and winters. Its brass mailbox had grown smooth from thousands of careful hands. To strangers, it looked old. To Arthur, it looked loved. He reached into his coat pocket and wrapped his fingers around the heavy iron key. The key itself felt almost alive with memory. Its edges had been polished by decades of use. Arthur wondered how many mornings it had unlocked this same familiar door. 20,000? Perhaps more. The lock clicked softly. a sound as comforting as hearing an old friend say, "Good morning." Arthur pushed the door open. The familiar scent welcomed him immediately. Old cedar wood, paper, ink, beeswax polish, a trace of yesterday's fireplace. It was a scent that belonged nowhere else in the world. The post office was quiet. Rows of polished mailboxes lined the far wall. Shelves waited patiently for parcels that would arrive later that morning. Behind the worn oak counter sat the brass scale that Arthur had used almost every day of his working life. Nothing had moved overnight. Everything waited exactly where it belonged. Arthur removed his hat, hung his brown coat on the same wooden hook. Then, as he had done every morning for decades, he walked to the small cast-iron stove in the corner. He knelt beside it, slowly, placed 2 pieces of dry pine wood inside, added 1 small cedar stick, then struck a single match. A tiny flame appeared, gentle, golden, patient. Within moments, the stove answered with the soft crackle of warming wood. The room seemed to breathe again. Outside, the first rays of sunlight slipped through the front windows. Dust floated lazily through the warm beams of light, dancing so slowly that they almost seemed suspended in time. Arthur smiled. Another quiet day had begun, and somewhere beyond the surrounding mountains, letters were already making their way toward Pine Hollow. Some carried happy news. Some carried ordinary news. Some simply reminded people that someone, somewhere, was thinking of them. Arthur believed every letter carried a little piece of hope. And hope, he often thought, should always be delivered gently. The morning mail. The little cast-iron stove warmed the room little by little. Arthur placed an old copper kettle on top, where the water would slowly begin to sing its familiar morning song. There was never any need to hurry. The post train would not arrive for another hour. Until then, the post office belonged only to the quiet. Arthur crossed the worn wooden floor with unhurried steps. Every board beneath his boots had its own voice. Some gave a soft creak. Others answered with a gentle sigh. He knew each one by heart. Near the front window stood a tall wooden shelf filled with neatly arranged pigeonholes. Each tiny compartment carried a family name painted years ago in careful black lettering. Bennett, Harper, Sullivan, Miller, Thompson, Walker. Dozens of names. Some belonged to families that had lived in Pine Hollow for generations. Others had slowly disappeared over the years. Yet Arthur had never removed their labels. He believed that memories deserved a place to rest, even when the people themselves had long since moved away. Sunlight continued to spread across the room. It climbed gently over the polished counter. It reached the brass postal scale. It touched the faded photographs hanging beside the doorway. One photograph showed the post office nearly 50 years earlier. The building looked almost the same. Perhaps the porch had been painted. Perhaps the maple tree outside had grown taller. But the feeling remained unchanged. Steady, comforting, familiar. Arthur dusted the picture frame with a soft cloth before placing it carefully back upon the wall. He smiled quietly. Some places did not need to become new. Some places only needed to be cared for. Outside, the first sounds of the village slowly awakened. A screen door closed somewhere nearby. A dog barked once, before settling again. Farther away, someone split firewood with slow, measured swings of an axe. The sound echoed gently through the valley, before fading into the forest. Arthur listened without thinking. These sounds had become part of his morning long ago. They were as familiar as breathing. The kettle gave a soft whistle. Not loud, just enough to remind him. He filled a thick stoneware mug with hot water and added a small handful of dried chamomile blossoms. The gentle floral scent rose into the warm air. Arthur wrapped both hands around the mug for a moment. The warmth reached his fingers immediately. He walked to the front porch. The old wooden rocking chair waited exactly where he had left it yesterday evening. He sat carefully. The chair answered with one gentle creak before becoming still. Across Maple Street, golden autumn leaves drifted slowly from the tall sugar maples. Some landed upon the sidewalk. Others danced across the empty road before settling quietly against the curb. A cool breeze carried the clean scent of pine forests mixed with distant chimney smoke. Arthur watched a single leaf float lazily through the morning air. It landed beside the red mailbox standing near the road. The mailbox had been there almost as long as he had. Its bright paint had faded through decades of rain, snow, sunshine, and countless gentle hands. Still, every morning someone placed a letter inside. Every afternoon, someone hoped for another. Arthur often thought hope traveled more faithfully than trains ever could. Letters carried birthdays, homecomings, apologies, congratulations, simple greetings. Sometimes they carried nothing more than a few kind words, and somehow those were often the letters people remembered for the longest time. The valley remained peaceful. Above the rooftops, a flock of geese crossed the pale blue sky in a graceful V. Arthur followed them until they disappeared beyond the distant hills. Then, very faintly, almost hidden beneath the breeze, he heard it, the long, low whistle of the morning train. Not close, not yet, just a soft echo drifting through the mountains. Arthur smiled into his warm cup of tea. The day had truly begun, and somewhere beyond the next bend in the valley, the first mailbags of the morning were making their slow journey toward Pine Hollow. The first delivery. The train always arrived with patience. Long before anyone could see it, Its gentle whistle drifted through the valley, rolling softly across the pine-covered hills like a familiar morning greeting. Arthur had heard that whistle nearly every day for 40 years. Still, he always paused to listen. He placed his empty mug upon the porch railing and looked toward the narrow railway that disappeared into the forest beyond the edge of town. The rails caught the morning sunlight, shining like two quiet ribbons stretching into the distance. A cool breeze wandered through the valley. The pine trees answered with a soft whisper. Golden leaves drifted lazily across Maple Street. Nothing hurried. Nothing demanded attention. Everything simply unfolded exactly as it should. Soon, a gentle cloud of white steam appeared between the trees. Then came the steady rhythm of steel wheels. Slow, even, comforting. Click, clack, click, clack. The sound echoed across Pine Hollow, blending perfectly with the songs of distant birds and the quiet murmur of Hollow Creek. The little steam locomotive rounded the final bend, moving at an easy pace. Its polished brass bell reflected the morning light. Warm clouds of steam drifted upward into the cool autumn air before disappearing among the tall pines. Arthur smiled. "There you are," he whispered softly. The train rolled into the small station with practiced grace. No rushing brakes, no loud engines, only the gentle sigh of steam as the locomotive came to rest beside the weathered wooden platform. Conductor Samuel Hayes stepped down first. His navy blue uniform looked as neat as ever, although the knees of his trousers carried a little dust from yesterday's journey. His silver pocket watch hung from a short chain across his vest. Arthur and Samuel had greeted one another nearly every weekday for longer than either could remember. Neither man felt the need for many words. Some friendships became comfortable enough to speak through simple smiles. "Morning, Arthur." "Morning, Sam." "Beautiful day." "It surely is." Samuel walked toward the mail car. Inside waited several canvas mailbags, each stamped with the familiar seal of the United States Post Office Department. Some were heavy, others hardly seemed to weigh anything at all. Every bag carried pieces of someone's life. Birthday cards, handwritten letters, family photographs, newspaper subscriptions, small parcels wrapped carefully in brown paper. Perhaps even a knitted scarf from a grandmother, or cookies baked with love by someone many miles away. Arthur accepted each mailbag with both hands. He never dragged them. He never dropped them. Every package deserved kindness. Every letter had traveled a long road to reach Pine Hollow. Together, Arthur and Samuel carried the bags across the quiet station platform. Their footsteps echoed gently against the old wooden boards. Above them, a pair of swallows circled beneath the station roof before disappearing into the clear blue sky. The town remained wonderfully peaceful. A bicycle rested outside the general store. Smoke drifted lazily from a nearby chimney. Somewhere farther up the hill, the church bell rang once, then settled again into silence. Back inside the post office, Arthur untied the first canvas bag. The thick rope slid free with a familiar whisper. He folded the empty sack neatly before placing it beside the counter. Then, one by one, the morning letters appeared. White envelopes, cream-colored postcards, small brown parcels tied carefully with string. Each one carried its own quiet journey. Each one had crossed rivers, mountains, busy cities, lonely highways, and endless stretches of countryside before finally arriving here, in the little forgotten post office of Pine Hollow. Arthur believed there was something almost magical about that. A simple letter could travel hundreds of miles, yet somehow it always seemed to find the right hands. The morning sunlight had grown warmer by the time Arthur finished sorting the first bundle of letters. Golden rays slipped gently through the tall front windows, resting quietly upon the polished oak counter and the rows of tiny wooden mailboxes lining the wall. The little post office felt alive now. Not busy, never busy, simply awake. The cast iron stove continued its gentle crackling. The kettle gave a quiet sigh every now and then. Outside, the breeze carried another handful of amber leaves across Maple Street. Arthur placed the final envelope into its proper compartment before looking toward the old clock hanging above the doorway. 8 o'clock, just as expected. The first visitor always arrived around this time. And as though the clock itself had invited her, the little brass bell above the front door gave a soft, cheerful ring. Arthur looked up with a gentle smile. A small girl stepped inside, carefully pushing the heavy wooden door behind her. She could not have been older than 8. She wore a warm knitted sweater the color of autumn wheat, with a dark green scarf wrapped snugly around her neck. Her brown boots carried tiny specks of mud from the forest path. Golden curls peeked out beneath a small wool hat. She smiled the moment she saw Arthur. "Good morning, Mr. Bell." Arthur smiled even wider. "Good morning, Emily." Emily visited the post office almost every Tuesday morning before school. Not because she needed to, but because she loved letters. She believed every envelope carried a tiny adventure inside. Arthur had never corrected her. Perhaps she was right. She walked slowly toward the counter, holding something carefully in both hands. A small envelope. The edges were decorated with tiny blue flowers drawn in colored pencil. In the upper corner sat a postage stamp placed just a little crooked. Arthur noticed. He noticed everything. "For your grandmother?" he asked softly. Emily nodded. "She says she likes handwritten letters more than telephone calls." Arthur chuckled quietly. "I believe she may be right." He accepted the envelope with both hands, treating it with the same care he would offer any valuable treasure. Because kindness should never depend upon size, a handwritten letter from a child could be just as precious as any official document. Arthur reached for the round brass date stamp resting beside the register. With one gentle motion, tap, October 14, 1951, Pine Hollow. The ink settled neatly upon the corner of the envelope. Emily watched with wide eyes. She loved that sound. Tap. Arthur smiled.
"I think your grandmother will be very happy to receive this." Emily's face brightened. "I hope so." Outside, somewhere beyond the maple trees, the distant whistle of the departing train echoed softly across the valley. Its sound grew quieter and quieter until only the wind remained. Emily looked through the front window for a moment. "I like the train," she whispered. "So do I," Arthur replied. "It always reminds me that every day someone is coming home and someone is writing to say they're thinking of the people they love." Emily thought about those words. Then she smiled. Children often understood simple truths more quickly than adults. Arthur walked around the counter and opened the front door for her. A cool breeze drifted inside, carrying the fresh scent of pine needles and distant cedar. "Have a wonderful day at school." "I will." She skipped gently down the porch steps, careful not to disturb the pile of colorful autumn leaves waiting below. Arthur watched until she disappeared around the corner. Only then did he return to the quiet warmth of the post office. The little brass bell above the door gave one final, delicate chime. Once again, the forgotten post office settled into peaceful silence. The fire crackled softly. The clock ticked patiently. And somewhere, hundreds of miles away, Emily's little letter had already begun its long and gentle journey.
After Emily had disappeared beyond the maple trees, the little post office grew quiet once again. Arthur never hurried to fill the silence. He believed silence had its own gentle language. It lived between the ticking clock, inside the soft crackle of the stove, in the distant songs of birds resting high among the pine branches. He returned behind the oak counter and carefully straightened a small stack of envelopes. Each one waited patiently for the person whose name was written across its front. Outside, the autumn breeze wandered lazily through Pine Hollow. Golden leaves drifted across the empty street, gathering quietly beside the wooden porch steps. The sun climbed a little higher. Its warm light settled across the windows of the bakery. Soon, the comforting scent of fresh bread floated gently through the village. Warm yeast, sweet butter, a hint of cinnamon. Arthur smiled. The smell reminded him of mornings from many years ago. Some memories never faded. They simply became softer with time. A few minutes later, another familiar sound reached the post office. Not the whistle of a train, not the bell above the front door. This sound arrived much slower, the gentle clopping of horses' hooves, steady, patient, comforting. Arthur walked onto the porch. Far down Maple Street, an old chestnut horse pulled a small wooden mail wagon toward the post office. Its wheels rolled softly across the gravel road. The driver tipped his hat the moment he noticed Arthur waiting. It was Daniel Harper. Most people simply called him Danny. For nearly 20 years, Danny had delivered mail to the farms scattered beyond Pine Hollow, places where the train could never reach. Tiny cottages hidden among forests, small cabins beside quiet lakes, old farms resting beneath wide open skies. The journey took nearly the whole day. Danny never complained. He said the countryside always rewarded those who traveled slowly enough to notice it. The wagon came to a gentle stop beside the porch. The horse lowered its head peacefully, grateful for the chance to rest. Arthur walked down the steps carrying a small bucket of fresh water. Without a word, he placed it beside the horse. The animal drank slowly. Danny smiled. "You always remember." Arthur shrugged gently. "Everyone works a little better after a drink." Danny laughed quietly. "So do I." Arthur disappeared inside for only a moment before returning with 2 warm mugs of coffee. Steam curled gently into the crisp morning air. Neither man rushed to speak. Old friends rarely needed many words. Sometimes they simply enjoyed sharing the quiet together. They stood beside the wagon, watching the town awaken. A woman swept the front porch of the general store. 2 children chased bright red leaves along the sidewalk before laughing all the way towards school. Smoke drifted lazily from stone chimneys. Far above the valley, somewhere nearby, a wind chime sang softly beneath the porch of a little white cottage. The horse flicked its tail lazily. The wagon rested. The coffee slowly cooled. And Pine Hollow carried on exactly as it always had. Without hurry, without noise, without asking anything more than a quiet moment of appreciation. At last, Danny climbed gently back onto the driver's seat. Arthur handed him the final canvas mailbag. It was lighter than the others. Mostly letters. A few newspapers. One carefully wrapped parcel tied with blue ribbon. Danny tucked the bag safely beneath the wooden bench. "See you this evening." Arthur nodded. "I'll have the kettle ready." The old wagon rolled forward once more. The sound of the wooden wheels gradually faded into the peaceful countryside. Clip, clop, clip, clop, until only the whispering pines remained. Arthur watched until both horse and wagon disappeared beyond the hill. Then he turned back toward the little post office. The brass bell above the door rang softly as he stepped inside. The warmth welcomed him once again. The stove crackled gently. The old clock continued its patient ticking. And somewhere on the road beyond Pine Hollow, a handful of letters were already carrying comfort, hope, and quiet friendship toward homes waiting beneath the tall autumn pines. Mrs. Eleanor's Tuesday. By mid-morning, the sunlight had settled gently across the rooftops of Pine Hollow. The valley had fully awakened now, not with noise, but with quiet purpose. A broom swept softly across a wooden porch. Somewhere nearby, a screen door opened and closed. A dog stretched lazily beneath the shade of an old maple tree before settling back into another peaceful nap. Inside the post office, Arthur continued sorting the last few letters. His hands moved with the same careful rhythm they had followed for decades. Every envelope found its place. Every parcel rested neatly upon the shelves. Nothing felt hurried. Nothing felt forgotten. The little brass bell above the front door gave another gentle ring. Arthur looked up. Standing in the doorway was Mrs. Eleanor Whitmore. She was well into her 70s. Her silver hair rested neatly beneath a soft blue hat trimmed with a narrow ribbon. A long wool coat hung gracefully over her shoulders despite the pleasant autumn weather. She carried a woven basket over one arm. Arthur smiled warmly. "Good morning, Mrs. Whitmore." "And a beautiful morning it is, Arthur." Her voice carried the gentle confidence of someone who had lived many peaceful seasons. She stepped inside slowly, pausing just long enough to admire the sunlight spilling across the polished wooden floor. "I believe this little building becomes prettier every autumn." Arthur chuckled softly. "I think the sunlight deserves most of the credit." Mrs. Whittemore smiled. "Oh, perhaps, but someone still has to polish the floors." Arthur gave a playful nod. "I suppose that's true." She placed her basket carefully upon the counter. Inside rested 6 small jars of homemade blackberry jam. Each one wore a tiny cloth cover tied neatly with white string. The labels had been written by hand. Arthur admired them quietly. "You've been busy." The blackberry bushes were especially generous this year, she smiled. "I thought perhaps the station master, the school teacher, and Danny might enjoy a jar." Arthur gently lifted one. "You always remember everyone." Mrs. Whittemore looked toward the front window, where golden leaves drifted lazily through the morning light. "When you've lived in one town long enough, everyone begins to feel like family." Arthur nodded. He believed that was one of the finest things anyone had ever said. She reached into her coat pocket and carefully removed 2 envelopes. Both were addressed in elegant handwriting. "My sister in Oregon still insists on writing letters." Arthur accepted them with a gentle smile. "I'm very glad she does." "So am I." Mrs. Whitmore laughed quietly. "A telephone call is over in minutes, but a letter, She rested one hand lightly upon the polished counter. "A letter stays beside you." Arthur carefully stamped each envelope. The familiar sound echoed softly through the room. Tap. October 14th, 1951. Pine Hollow. Mrs. Whitmore closed her eyes for just a moment. "I've always loved that sound." Arthur smiled. "So have I." Outside, the breeze carried another shower of bright amber leaves across Maple Street. For a few peaceful moments, neither of them spoke. There was no need. The silence felt friendly, comfortable, like sitting beside an old friend with a warm cup of tea. Mrs. Whitmore eventually looked toward the shelves behind Arthur. "I remember when this place had only 12 mailboxes." Arthur laughed quietly. "And now we have nearly 60. It still feels exactly the same." She said it almost as though she were speaking to herself. Arthur glanced around the room. The old clock, the polished counter, the cedar shelves, the warm stove, the brass scale. Perhaps she was right. Some places changed so slowly that they seemed to protect time itself. Mrs. Whitmore picked up her basket once again. "I should let you get back to work." Arthur walked around the counter and opened the door for her. A cool autumn breeze drifted inside. The scent of pine, fallen leaves, and fresh bread filled the little post office. Mrs. Whitmore paused on the porch. She looked across the quiet village with peaceful eyes. What a lovely day. Arthur stood beside her. "It certainly is." She smiled once more before making her way slowly toward the church at the top of the hill. Arthur watched until she disappeared behind the bright maple trees. Only then did he return inside. The little brass bell gave one final gentle chime. The post office settled once again into its familiar rhythm. The clock continued ticking. The fire whispered softly inside the stove. And somewhere far beyond the mountains, 2 handwritten letters had quietly begun another long journey. The morning drifted onward with the quiet confidence of a day that had nowhere else to be. Inside the post office, Arthur finished arranging the last of the newspapers upon the wooden shelf near the front window. The sunlight had become softer now, no longer the pale light of dawn, but the warm golden glow that settled gently over Pine Hollow as the hours passed. Outside, Maple Street welcomed the slow rhythm of another peaceful day. A bicycle leaned against the fence outside the general store. Its wicker basket held a small bouquet of wildflowers gathered from the edge of Hollow Creek. Across the road, a tabby cat stretched lazily upon the front step of the barber shop before curling into another comfortable nap. The valley carried no urgency, no rushing footsteps, no impatient voices, only the comforting sounds of ordinary life. Arthur placed his hat upon the coat hook and stepped outside for a few moments. He locked the front door, not because he expected trouble, but simply because habit became part of his morning routine. Just a few doors farther along Maple Street stood the village bakery. Its painted wooden sign read, "Willow and Son Family Bakery." The lettering had faded gently over the years, yet it still welcomed everyone who passed. Even before Arthur reached the front porch, he could smell warm bread cooling on wooden racks. Fresh sourdough, butter rolls, apple cinnamon loaves, sweet honey biscuits. The comforting aroma floated into the crisp autumn air, mixing with the scent of pine trees and fallen leaves. Arthur smiled to himself. He often believed that every town should have a bakery, not simply because people needed bread, but because every town deserved a place that smelled like kindness. The little bell above the bakery door gave a cheerful ring as he stepped inside. Warmth greeted him immediately. The ovens still glowed softly. Wooden shelves displayed rows of fresh loaves, each resting upon linen cloths. Sunlight poured through the front windows, catching tiny clouds of flour drifting lazily through the air. Behind the counter stood Martha Willow. She tied her flour-dusted apron behind her back and smiled the moment she saw Arthur. "Good morning, Arthur." "Good morning, Martha. I had a feeling you'd stop by." Arthur laughed quietly. "I think the smell of fresh bread made the decision for me." Martha smiled. "It usually does." She placed a still warm loaf upon a wooden cutting board. Steam escaped gently as she sliced the first piece. The rich scent of baked wheat filled the room. She spread a little fresh butter across the warm bread. It melted almost immediately. Arthur accepted the plate with grateful hands. The first bite reminded him why simple things were often the most memorable. Warm bread, fresh butter, a quiet morning, good company. Sometimes happiness asked for nothing more. For a little while, neither of them spoke. The bakery itself seemed to enjoy the silence. Somewhere in the kitchen, another batch of bread settled gently as it cooled. The old wooden floor gave a familiar creak beneath Martha's careful footsteps. Outside, a pair of sparrows landed upon the windowsill, watching the world with quiet curiosity. Martha poured 2 small cups of freshly brewed coffee. She handed one to Arthur before leaning comfortably against the counter. "How many letters today?" she asked softly. Arthur thought for a moment. "Just enough." She smiled. "That's usually the right number." Arthur nodded. "I've learned something over the years." "Oh?" "No matter how many letters arrive, someone is always waiting for one." Martha looked toward the bakery window. "I suppose that's true. My husband still checks our mailbox every afternoon." Arthur smiled warmly. "Hope has a very reliable schedule." Martha laughed gently. The sound blended perfectly with the quiet room. Neither loud nor sudden, only warm. only kind. Arthur finished the last bite of bread before thanking her once again.
You always make the finest loaf in the valley. Martha shook her head with a humble smile. I simply give the dough enough time. Arthur placed his empty cup upon the counter. Perhaps that's the secret to most good things. Martha watched him with thoughtful eyes. Enough time. The words lingered gently between them. Arthur stepped outside once more. The autumn sunshine welcomed him back to Maple Street. The church bell rang softly in the distance. A cool breeze carried another handful of golden leaves across the quiet road. He took one slow breath. The village smelled of fresh bread, pine trees, wood smoke, and the promise of another peaceful afternoon. With unhurried steps, Arthur began walking back toward the little post office. Waiting patiently beneath the tall pines, exactly where it had always been. An afternoon of quiet letters. By early afternoon, the golden light had shifted gently across Maple Street. The long shadows of the pine trees stretched peacefully over the sidewalks, where scattered autumn leaves rested exactly where the breeze had left them. Inside the post office, the air felt pleasantly warm. The cast iron stove had settled into a slow, steady crackle. Its gentle warmth mixed with the comforting scent of cedar shelves, old paper, sealing wax, and the faint sweetness of the chamomile tea Arthur had enjoyed earlier that morning. The old clock upon the wall marked the passing hours with quiet confidence. Tick, tick, tick. Arthur had always liked that clock. It never hurried. It never slowed. It simply reminded everyone that time could move gently if they allowed it to. He carefully opened a small wooden drawer beneath the counter. Inside rested dozens of neatly folded pieces of brown wrapping paper, small rolls of string, tiny brass scissors, and several sticks of bright red sealing wax. Every item had its place. Every tool waited patiently until it was needed. Arthur believed an orderly desk brought a peaceful mind. Perhaps that is why he never finished a day without returning everything to exactly where it belonged. Outside the window, a gentle breeze stirred the branches of the old maple tree standing beside the porch. Its leaves shimmered softly beneath the afternoon sun. A single leaf floated downward, turning slowly through the air until it landed upon the front step. Arthur watched it for a moment. Nature never seemed to rush. Not the trees, not the clouds, not the river.
Perhaps people were never meant to hurry quite so much either. The brass bell above the front door rang softly. Arthur looked up. A familiar gentleman stepped inside, carrying a worn leather satchel beneath one arm. It was Dr. Henry Collins, the town physician. His gray tweed jacket carried the pleasant scent of fresh autumn air. His round spectacles rested comfortably upon his nose. His smile appeared exactly as calm as Arthur remembered. "Good afternoon, Arthur." "Good afternoon, Doctor." "I hope I'm not interrupting." Arthur shook his head. Quiet afternoons always have room for a visitor. Dr. Collins smiled. "I've brought 3 letters." He removed them carefully from his satchel. One was addressed to a medical supplier in Portland, another to an old friend in Boston. The third was written simply to his younger sister. Arthur noticed the careful handwriting. "You still write every Sunday?" Dr. Collins nodded. "Every week." Arthur gently turned the first envelope in his hands.
She must look forward to your letters. I believe she does. The doctor smiled thoughtfully. And to tell the truth, so do I. Arthur placed the letters upon the scale, one by one. The polished brass weights clicked softly into place. The familiar little balance settled perfectly. Everything about the process felt peaceful, measured, patient, intentional. Dr. Collins looked around the room. "I've always enjoyed this place." Arthur smiled. "I think buildings remember kindness." The doctor looked toward the cedar shelves lined with hundreds of small mailboxes. "You may be right. I've never walked through that door without feeling calmer than when I arrived." Arthur quietly stamped the final envelope. Tap. The sound echoed gently through the room. Dr. Collins closed his eyes for just a heartbeat. "I do love that sound." Arthur laughed softly. "It seems many people do." Outside, the afternoon breeze carried the distant laughter of children walking home from school. Their voices floated lightly through the valley before fading into the whispering forest. Dr. Collins listened. "There they are." Arthur nodded. "Every afternoon. They remind the whole town that another good day is nearly finished." The doctor placed his hat back upon his head. "I suppose I'd better return to the clinic." Arthur walked him to the front door. The sunlight outside had become softer now, warmer, more golden. It rested gently upon every rooftop, every porch, every quiet window in Pine Hollow. Dr. Collins paused before stepping down onto the sidewalk. "You know, Arthur, some places help people without ever knowing it." Arthur looked toward the peaceful street. "The post office?" The doctor smiled. "The post office. People come here carrying hope. They leave, carrying hope.
Arthur stood quietly for a moment after the doctor disappeared down Maple Street. His words lingered gently in the afternoon air. People came carrying hope. Perhaps that had always been true. Some hoped for good news. Some hoped for familiar handwriting. Some simply to know they had not been forgotten. Arthur returned inside. He placed the doctor's letters carefully into the outgoing mailbag. Each envelope rested beside dozens of others. Different destinations, different stories, different lives, yet all beginning their next journey from this one small building beneath the tall pine trees. The clock continued its patient ticking. The stove whispered softly. Outside, sunlight drifted lower across the valley, and the forgotten post office quietly carried on, exactly as it had for another peaceful afternoon.
The afternoon of quiet letters. By the time the church clock gently chimed 2 in the afternoon, the little village of Pine Hollow had settled into its quietest hour. The morning's gentle bustle had slowly faded away. Children remained at school. The bakery had welcomed its last customer before closing its front door for the afternoon. Even the birds seemed to sing a little more softly beneath the tall pines. Warm sunlight rested peacefully across Maple Street. Long shadows stretched beneath the old maple trees, where bright autumn leaves continued their slow and graceful dance toward the ground. Inside the post office, Arthur Bell stood beside the sorting table, carefully arranging the last few letters that had arrived on the morning train. The room felt wonderfully still. The cast iron stove no longer crackled as brightly as it had before, but it continued to offer a quiet, comforting warmth. The familiar ticking of the old wall clock echoed gently through the room. Tick, tick, tick. Arthur had often thought that every post office had its own heartbeat. For Pine Hollow, it was that old clock. Always patient, always steady. Never asking anyone to hurry. Arthur picked up a small cream-colored envelope addressed to Mrs. Eleanor Whittemore. The handwriting was elegant, carefully formed. The return address came from Portland, Oregon. Arthur smiled. Her sister had written again. He imagined Mrs. Whittemore sitting beside her front window later that evening, pouring a cup of tea before opening the envelope with great care. She would read each line slowly, perhaps even twice. Some letters deserved to be read more than once. He placed the envelope gently into its waiting mailbox. Next came a postcard. Its picture showed the Grand Canyon beneath a brilliant blue sky. The message was short, just a few kind words from a young soldier writing to his parents. Arthur never read the messages inside. That would never have felt right. But sometimes, without meaning to, a single sentence would catch his eye as he checked an address or straightened a folded corner.
Those brief glimpses reminded him of something important. Behind every envelope, someone was hoping to be remembered. Outside, a cool breeze brushed softly against the front porch. The brass bell above the entrance gave the faintest little sound, not because someone had entered, simply because the wind had nudged the old wooden door ever so gently. Arthur looked toward the window. The red mailbox near the sidewalk stood quietly beneath the great maple tree. A single golden leaf landed upon its curved top before slowly sliding down the painted metal and drifting onto the ground below. He watched it for a moment. There was something peaceful about leaves. They never hurried toward the earth. They simply trusted the wind. Arthur often wondered whether people might sleep a little better if they learned from autumn leaves to let go, a little at a time, without fear, without resistance. The afternoon light grew softer. Golden sunlight slowly turned to amber. Dust floated lazily through the warm beams that crossed the wooden floor. Everything inside the post office seemed wrapped in gentle stillness. The shelves, the counter. The polished brass scale. Even Ginger, the little orange cat who had quietly wandered in through the back door, curled into a comfortable circle beside the stove. Arthur smiled. "Good afternoon, old friend." Ginger answered with the smallest purr before closing his eyes once more. Arthur returned to his work. There were only a handful of letters left to organize before the evening collection. No rush. There never was. Outside, the wind whispered through the pine trees. Somewhere beyond the hills, a distant train called softly across the valley. And inside the forgotten post office of Pine Hollow, time continued to move exactly as it always had. Slowly, kindly, one quiet letter at a time. The old blue mailbox at the crossroads. As the afternoon quietly unfolded across Pine Hollow, the golden light began to soften into the rich colors of early autumn. The valley seemed to exhale. The busy part of the day had passed. Now, the little town settled into a peaceful rhythm that Arthur Bell had always loved the most. This was the hour when even time appeared to slow its careful footsteps. Arthur placed his hat upon the oak counter and picked up a small leather satchel. Inside rested only a handful of letters. There were 6 envelopes, 1 newspaper, and a small parcel wrapped neatly in brown paper and tied with cotton string. They were all destined for the old blue mailbox that stood at the crossroads just beyond Miller's farm. Even though most of Pine Hollow's residents collected their mail directly from the post office, a few families living farther into the valley preferred the quiet little mailbox that had faithfully served the countryside for nearly half a century. Arthur made the short walk every afternoon. He had done so for many years. Never because someone told him to, simply because he believed every delivery deserved a personal touch. He stepped outside. The brass bell above the door offered one soft farewell as the wooden door closed gently behind him. A cool breeze greeted him immediately.
No two leaves ever followed exactly the same path, yet every one reached the earth peacefully. Before long, the valley opened into wide meadows where tall grasses shimmered beneath the afternoon sun. Beyond them stood the old crossroads. And there, exactly as it had stood for decades, waited the blue mailbox. The scent of sun-warmed pine needles filled the air. Somewhere nearby, apples had begun to ripen in a small orchard, adding a faint sweetness to the afternoon breeze. Arthur followed the familiar gravel path leading away from the center of town. The road curved gently beneath towering pine trees, whose branches swayed lazily overhead. Sunlight filtered through the needles, creating patches of warm gold that danced across the ground with every passing breeze. His footsteps remained slow and steady. Crunch. 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 Dry leaves rested beneath his boots. Every few moments, another leaf floated quietly from the branches above, joining those already scattered across the roadside. Arthur always enjoyed watching them fall.
Its paint had faded under countless summers and snowy winters. Tiny scratches covered its sides. The little red flag had lost some of its color years ago, yet it remained strong, reliable, patient, just like the people who visited it. Arthur smiled as he approached. He gently brushed away a few fallen maple leaves resting upon its roof. "You've been keeping watch again," he whispered with a quiet smile. The mailbox, of course, offered no reply. Yet somehow, Arthur always felt it listened. Arthur unlocked the small front door. Inside waited only 2 envelopes. One was addressed to a family in Montana. The other would travel all the way to Savannah, Georgia. Arthur carefully placed them inside his satchel. Then he arranged the new letters neatly inside the box. Each envelope rested flat. Each corner remained smooth. He never liked seeing a letter bent. Letters deserved better than that. Closing the little metal door, Arthur paused for a moment. The afternoon breeze drifted gently through the meadow. Wildflowers nodded softly beside the fence line. Far across the fields, a pair of horses grazed peacefully beneath the shade of an old oak tree. The only sound was the distant song of meadowlarks carried upon the wind. Arthur rested one hand upon the top of the blue mailbox. Its metal had grown pleasantly warm beneath the afternoon sun. He thought about all the journeys that had begun here. Letters announcing new babies, wedding invitations, birthday wishes, holiday greetings, simple notes saying, "I've been thinking about you." Sometimes the smallest letters carried the greatest comfort. Arthur believed the world could always use a few more handwritten words, a few more quiet conversations, a few more reminders that someone, somewhere, still cared. He stood there for another peaceful moment before adjusting the strap of his satchel. The journey back to Pine Hollow would take only 15 minutes. There was still plenty of daylight remaining. The evening train would not arrive until sunset, and somewhere, just beyond the western hills, another day's worth of letters was already making its slow and gentle way toward the little forgotten post office. Arthur turned toward home. The wind whispered softly through the pines behind him. The blue mailbox stood faithfully at the crossroads, waiting, just as it had always had, patiently, quietly, ready to welcome the next letter. By the time Arthur Bell returned to the post office, the afternoon had begun its quiet journey toward evening. The sunlight that had filled the valley only an hour before had softened into long ribbons of amber, stretching gently across Maple Street. The air felt cooler now. A pleasant breeze wandered through the pine trees, carrying with it the comforting scent of cedar, dry leaves, and fresh earth after a warm autumn day. Arthur opened the red-painted door of the post office. The familiar brass bell offered its gentle greeting. Inside, everything remained exactly as he had left it. The old wall clock continued its patient ticking. The cast-iron stove held the last of its afternoon warmth. Ginger, the orange cat, stretched lazily beside the hearth before blinking sleepily at Arthur. "Hello again, old friend," Arthur said softly. Ginger answered with a quiet purr before settling comfortably once more. Arthur removed his hat and carefully placed the outgoing letters onto the sorting table. He checked each address one final time, not because he doubted his work, simply because careful hands brought quiet confidence. Outside, the village had become wonderfully peaceful. The children had returned home from school. Soft laughter drifted through the cool evening air before slowly fading behind nearby cottages. A screen door closed gently somewhere along Willow Lane. Far away, a wind chime answered the breeze with a delicate melody. Arthur walked toward the front window. From there, he could see nearly all of Maple Street. The bakery windows glowed with warm, golden light. Mr. Lawson stood outside his grocery store, carefully sweeping the wooden sidewalk before closing for the evening. Across the road, Mrs. Whittemore watered the flower boxes beneath her front porch. She paused for a moment and waved. Arthur returned the gesture with a warm smile. No words were needed,
kind neighbors often understood each other perfectly without speaking. A few minutes later, a familiar sound floated gently across the valley. The distant whistle of the evening train, long, low, and comforting. Arthur closed his eyes for just a moment. He had heard that whistle thousands of times, yet somehow it always sounded new. The train never hurried through Pine Hollow. It arrived with quiet dignity.
Evening, Arthur. Good evening, Sam. It looks like the valley is settling down. Arthur nodded. It always knows when the day is ready to rest. As though it understood that this little valley preferred peaceful moments over busy ones. Arthur collected the waiting canvas mailbag and stepped outside. The cool evening breeze brushed gently against his coat. The western sky had begun to glow with soft shades of gold, rose, and pale lavender. High above the mountains, a small flock of geese crossed silently toward the south. One by one, the first porch lanterns began to shine. Their warm light reflected softly upon polished windows. The entire village seemed wrapped inside a blanket of gentle evening light. Arthur started the short walk toward the station. The gravel path crunched softly beneath his boots. Every step felt familiar. Every corner of Pine Hollow held another quiet memory. As he reached the station platform, Samuel Hayes was already waiting beside the locomotive. Warm steam drifted peacefully into the cool autumn air. The conductor smiled.
Together, they exchanged the day's final mailbags with the same quiet care they had shared for many years. There was no rush, no loud voices, only the comforting rhythm of familiar work. As the locomotive prepared to leave, its bell rang softly. The great wheels began to turn. Slowly, steadily, the train slipped away beneath the tall pine trees. Its whistle echoed gently across the mountains one final time before fading into the distance. Arthur remained on the platform for another peaceful moment. The valley grew wonderfully still once again. Only the whisper of the wind remained. Only the scent of pine. Only the fading colors of another beautiful autumn evening. Arthur smiled quietly. Tomorrow morning, the train would return, bringing more letters, more stories, more small reminders that somewhere beyond the mountains, someone was always thinking of someone else. And in the little forgotten post office of Pine Hollow, those quiet connections would always find a welcome home.
Closing time. The last echo of the evening train had long since disappeared beyond the western hills. Silence returned to Pine Hollow with the gentle certainty of nightfall. Arthur Bell stood quietly on the station platform for another moment, watching the thin ribbon of steam dissolve into the cool autumn sky. There was something comforting about watching the train disappear. It reminded him that every journey had its own gentle ending. And every ending quietly made room for another beginning. With an easy breath, Arthur adjusted his coat and began the familiar walk back toward the post office. The village had grown wonderfully calm. Golden light still glowed from a handful of cottage windows. The bakery had gone dark. The grocery store stood peacefully behind its freshly swept porch. Only the warm lantern outside the general store continued to shine softly beside the front door. Its gentle light swayed ever so slightly in the evening breeze. Arthur walked without hurry. His footsteps made a quiet rhythm upon the gravel path. Crunch. Pause. Crunch. Pause. The old maple trees stretched their branches above him. Leaves drifted lazily through the cool air. Some landed upon the road. Others settled gently along the wooden fences. Not a single leaf seemed to be in a hurry. Arthur smiled to himself. Nature rarely rushed. Perhaps that was why it always seemed so peaceful. As he reached the post office, the familiar brass bell welcomed him home one last time. Inside, the little building felt warmer than the evening air outside. The cast-iron stove still held a gentle glow beneath its black iron door. The scent of cedar wood, warm paper, old books, and polished oak quietly filled the room. Ginger slowly lifted his head from the small woven rug beside the stove. He stretched one paw, then the other, before wandering lazily toward Arthur. "Still awake?" Arthur whispered. The little orange cat answered with a soft purr before brushing gently against Arthur's boots. Arthur smiled. "You've been guarding the place well." Ginger blinked slowly, as if accepting the compliment. Arthur moved behind the oak counter.
Only a few small tasks remained before another peaceful day could come to an end. He carefully closed the ledger, straightened the stack of blank envelopes beside the register, placed the brass date stamp back inside its velvet-lined drawer. Then he gently polished the old brass postal scale with a soft cloth. The scale had served Pine Hollow faithfully for longer than Arthur could remember. Its polished surface reflected the warm lantern light like quiet gold. Arthur believed every tool deserved respect. After all, things that served others every day deserved kindness too. old wall clock quietly marked the passing minutes. Tick, tick, tick. Its steady rhythm filled every corner of the little post office. Arthur often thought the clock never sounded lonely, even when no one else remained. It simply continued doing what it had always done. 1 second. 1 minute. 1 peaceful hour at a time.
Outside, evening slowly gave way to night. The sky above Pine Hollow deepened into rich shades of navy blue. One bright star appeared above the eastern ridge, then another. Soon, the whole valley rested beneath a blanket of quiet stars. Arthur stepped onto the front porch, carrying a small lantern. He hung it carefully beside the red-painted door. Its warm amber light spilled softly across the wooden steps. Travelers passing through the village often said they could always find the post office by its lantern. Arthur liked that thought. Every town deserved at least one welcoming light after sunset. He stood for a while beneath the peaceful night sky. The air smelled wonderfully fresh. Pine needles, cool earth, wood smoke drifting from distant chimneys. Somewhere far beyond the forest, an owl called gently into the darkness. Arthur closed his eyes for one slow breath, then another. The valley answered with perfect stillness. No rush, no worry, no unfinished business waiting for tomorrow. Only gratitude for another quiet day. Another handful of letters delivered. Another evening shared with a village he had come to love like family. Arthur opened his eyes once more. The lantern beside the door continued its soft, golden glow. Behind him, the little forgotten post office rested peacefully. Ahead of him, Pine Hollow slept beneath the stars. And somewhere beyond the mountains, new letters had already begun their gentle journey.
The lamplight along Maple Street. Night settled gently over Pine Hollow. The last colors of sunset had quietly disappeared beyond the western hills, leaving behind a sky painted with countless stars. Above the valley, the moon rose slowly between the tall pine trees. Its silver light rested softly upon the rooftops, the wooden fences, and the quiet waters of Hollow Creek. The village seemed to breathe more slowly now. Even the wind had become gentler. Arthur Bell stood on the porch of the post office, with both hands resting comfortably upon the smooth wooden railing. The lantern beside the red front door glowed with a warm amber light. It was never a bright light. It never needed to be. Its purpose was simple: to quietly welcome anyone who might still be walking through the village after sunset. Arthur had always believed that every small town deserved at least one light that remained awake while everyone else prepared for sleep. Across Maple Street, one porch lantern after another began to appear. Some were hung beside front doors, others rested in windows. A few sat upon old wooden fence posts, their soft golden light stretching across quiet gardens. The entire village seemed wrapped beneath hundreds of tiny stars, some above, some below.
Arthur smiled at the thought. For a long moment, he simply listened. The evening had its own gentle orchestra. Leaves whispered softly overhead. The creek flowed patiently beneath the old wooden bridge. Somewhere in the distance, a wind chime answered the breeze with a quiet melody. From farther up the hillside came the faint sound of an owl greeting the night. Nothing interrupted the silence. Everything belonged. Arthur stepped down from the porch and began his slow walk along Maple Street. This had become his favorite part of every evening. There was no destination, no task waiting to be finished. Only a peaceful walk through the village he had called home for most of his life. The gravel beneath his boots crunched softly. Each step echoed for only a moment before disappearing into the stillness. He passed the bakery first. Its windows were dark now. Inside, tomorrow's bread dough rested beneath clean linen cloths, waiting patiently for another morning. Arthur imagined the warm smell of fresh bread already filling the little kitchen before sunrise. He smiled. Morning seemed closer when he thought about the bakery. Farther along the street stood the general store. Mr. Lawson had already extinguished the porch lamp. Only the moonlight remained, resting quietly upon the weathered wooden sign that swung gently above the entrance. Arthur tipped his hat anyway. Old habits often became lifelong companions. At the corner of Maple Street, Mrs. Whittemore's cottage glowed softly from within. Curtains remained half open. Arthur could see her sitting comfortably beside the fireplace. A small teacup rested upon the table. One of the letters from her sister lay open upon her lap. She was reading slowly, perhaps for the second time, perhaps the third. Arthur quietly continued walking. Letters were never truly finished after the first reading. Sometimes their warmth stayed with us for many peaceful evenings.
The cool autumn air carried the comforting scent of burning oak logs from nearby chimneys. It reminded Arthur of evenings from long ago. Evenings when his own parents would sit beside the fire, speaking softly while the wind wandered through the pine trees outside. Those memories no longer felt distant. They felt close, like familiar footsteps walking gently beside him. As he reached the wooden bridge crossing Hollow Creek, Arthur paused. The water reflected the moon like polished silver. Tiny ripples carried the reflection slowly downstream. For a moment, the moon appeared to travel with the creek. Arthur rested both hands upon the smooth railing. The wood felt cool beneath his fingers. He took one slow breath, then another. The whole valley seemed to breathe together. Nothing asked to be changed. Nothing needed to happen. The night was already complete. Above him, countless stars filled the clear October sky. Arthur recognized many of them. Some had watched over Pine Hollow since long before the little post office had been built, long before the railway reached the valley, long before anyone had thought to name the quiet creek flowing beneath the bridge. The stars simply continued shining, patiently, faithfully. Night after peaceful night. Arthur smiled once more. Tomorrow would bring new letters. New conversations. New footsteps upon the old wooden porch. But tonight, the village needed nothing more. Only quiet. Only rest. Only the gentle promise that morning would arrive again in its own perfect time. With one last glance toward the stars, Arthur turned back toward the warm lantern waiting beside the little forgotten post office. Its golden light shone quietly against the darkness. Steady, comforting, always there to welcome the next traveler. Or simply another peaceful night in Pine Hollow. The morning mist over Hollow Creek. Morning arrived so gently that it almost seemed to appear without a single sound. Long before the first rays of sunlight reached the rooftops of Pine Hollow, a pale silver mist had quietly settled across the valley. It drifted above Hollow Creek like a soft blanket, curling around the smooth stones and wooden bridge before disappearing beneath the towering pine trees. The entire village still slept peacefully. Curtains remained closed. Lanterns had long since gone dark. Only the first blue light of dawn rested softly upon the distant mountain peaks. Arthur Bell was already awake. He always rose before the birds, not because he needed to, but because he loved those quiet moments when the world belonged only to the morning. Inside his little white cottage, the kettle rested gently upon the stove. Soon, the comforting scent of fresh coffee filled the warm kitchen. Arthur carried his favorite stoneware mug to the front porch. Steam curled lazily into the cool autumn air. He wrapped both hands around the mug, enjoying its warmth against the morning chill. For several peaceful minutes, he simply stood there, watching, listening, breathing. The pine forest seemed almost enchanted beneath the mist. Every branch held tiny drops of dew. Spider webs stretched between the shrubs, each delicate thread sparkling like silver beneath the growing light. Far away, a robin offered the first quiet song of the day. Another answered, then another. Within moments, the forest awakened little by little, never all at once, always gently. Arthur smiled. He believed birds understood mornings better than anyone. They never hurried the sunrise, they simply welcomed it. After finishing the last warm sip of coffee, Arthur placed the empty mug beside the front door and began his familiar walk toward Hollow Creek. The gravel path felt cool beneath his boots. Tiny beads of dew rested upon every blade of grass beside the trail. Each step released the fresh scent of damp earth and fallen pine needles. As he reached the wooden bridge, he slowed almost to a stop. Mist drifted silently beneath the weathered planks. The creek below moved with quiet confidence, flowing around smooth stones polished by countless seasons. Arthur rested one hand upon the wooden railing. Drops of dew cooled his fingertips. He looked down into the clear water. A family of ducks glided peacefully across the gentle current. Their reflections rippled softly before melting into the silver mist. One small duckling paddled just a little behind the others, never far enough to be alone, never close enough to disturb their peaceful rhythm. Arthur watched until they disappeared around a quiet bend in the creek. He often thought nature carried its own kind of wisdom. No speeches, no instructions, only gentle examples. The mist slowly lifted. Little by little, the rooftops of Pine Hollow began to appear once again. The church steeple emerged first, then the bakery chimney. Soon after, the familiar red door of the little post office came into view. Warm sunlight finally reached the tops of the pine trees. Golden light spilled through the branches in long, gentle beams. Dust-like droplets floated through the air, shining briefly before disappearing into the morning. Arthur closed his eyes for one slow breath. The cool air filled his lungs with the clean scent of cedar, fresh water, and autumn leaves. He exhaled slowly. Some mornings felt almost like a quiet prayer, not spoken aloud, simply felt. As the mist continued to drift away, Pine Hollow slowly awakened. A distant rooster welcomed the new day. Smoke rose lazily from the first chimney. Somewhere beyond the hill, the
The baker opened his kitchen window. The sweet aroma of rising bread floated gently across the valley. Arthur smiled. Another beautiful day had quietly begun. There would be letters waiting, neighbors to greet, fresh coffee to share. Perhaps another handwritten envelope carrying kind words from someone many miles away. Nothing extraordinary, nothing exciting, only the simple comfort of ordinary life. And Arthur believed those ordinary moments were often the most precious of all. With calm, familiar steps, he turned toward the little forgotten post office. The old brass key rested comfortably inside his coat pocket. The red-painted door waited patiently beneath the morning light, just as it always had, ready to welcome another peaceful day, one gentle letter at a time.
The Little Red Bicycle.
By the time the sun had climbed above the eastern ridge, Pine Hollow had awakened to another calm autumn morning. Golden light slipped gently between the tall pine trees, painting long patterns across Maple Street. The air still carried the freshness of dawn. Tiny drops of dew sparkled upon every blade of grass, shining like little pieces of glass before quietly disappearing beneath the growing warmth of the morning. Arthur Bell unlocked the front door of the post office. The familiar brass bell gave its cheerful little ring. It was never loud, only enough to quietly announce that another peaceful day had begun. Inside, the room welcomed him with its familiar comforts, the scent of polished oak, fresh paper, ink, cedar shelves, and the gentle warmth left behind by yesterday's fire. Arthur opened the front windows. Cool morning air drifted inside. The white curtains moved softly with the breeze. Outside, birds continued their cheerful conversations high among the pine branches. The old clock on the wall marked another steady minute. Tick, tick, tick. Arthur smiled. "Good morning," he whispered to the quiet little room. Some places, he believed, deserved to be greeted just as warmly as people. He carefully arranged the day's newspapers beside the front counter. Next came a neat row of postcards. Then several small parcels wrapped in brown paper. Everything rested exactly where it belonged. Order had always brought Arthur a quiet sense of peace. Just as he finished placing the final parcel onto the shelf, he heard a familiar sound approaching from the far end of Maple Street. Not footsteps, not a horse, not the train. A bicycle. Its tiny bell rang once. Bright, cheerful, gentle. Arthur stepped onto the porch. A little red bicycle rolled slowly toward the post office. Its paint had become slightly faded after many seasons of adventures. The silver handlebars reflected the morning sunlight. A small wicker basket rested on the front. Inside sat a folded blue envelope. The rider smiled the moment she saw Arthur. It was Emily. Her golden curls danced beneath her wool cap as she carefully parked the bicycle beside the porch. "Good morning, Mr. Bell." Arthur returned the smile. "Good morning, Emily.
You've started your day early. Emily looked down at the basket. I finished my homework before breakfast. Arthur chuckled softly. That sounds very responsible. Emily laughed. My mother says letters shouldn't have to wait. Arthur nodded thoughtfully. I believe your mother is quite wise. Emily lifted the blue envelope from the basket. The envelope was decorated with tiny drawings of pine cones, squirrels, and little autumn leaves carefully colored with crayons. You've been busy. I wanted it to make her smile before she even opened it. Arthur looked at the colorful drawings for another quiet moment. I think you've already succeeded. Emily beamed. For children, hope often appeared in the simplest forms. A picture, a drawing, a handwritten note, or a carefully chosen postage stamp. Arthur placed the envelope gently upon the counter inside the post office. Emily followed him, looking around the familiar room. Sunlight streamed through the windows, covering the wooden floor with warm golden squares. Dust drifted lazily through the light. Everything felt peaceful. Everything felt exactly as it should. Emily walked toward the row of tiny wooden mailboxes. Do you ever get tired of letters? Arthur considered the question carefully. Then he smiled. No. Emily tilted her head. Never? Arthur shook his head. Because every letter begins with someone thinking kindly about someone else. Emily looked quietly at the rows of little boxes. I never thought about that. Arthur gently stamped the envelope. Tap. October 15th, 1951. Pine Hollow. The familiar sound echoed softly through the room. Emily closed her eyes for just a second. I like that sound. Arthur smiled. So do I. Outside, the breeze carried another handful of golden leaves across the porch. One leaf landed gently on Emily's bicycle seat before slowly sliding to the ground. She laughed. It looks like autumn wants to come with me. Arthur stepped outside beside her. I think autumn enjoys good company. Emily climbed carefully onto her little red bicycle. Before leaving, she looked back. Will my cousin get the letter soon? Arthur nodded warmly. Perhaps not tomorrow. Perhaps not the next day. But one morning, she'll open her mailbox and she'll know you were thinking about her. Emily smiled so brightly that it almost seemed to light the morning more than the sunshine itself. She rang the little bicycle bell once, then twice, before riding slowly down Maple Street. Arthur watched until the little red bicycle disappeared beyond the maple trees. Its tiny bell grew quieter and quieter until only birdsong remained. He stood on the porch for another peaceful moment. The autumn breeze moved gently through the village. The pine trees whispered overhead, and somewhere beyond the distant mountains, another train was already carrying hundreds of quiet letters toward people waiting to smile. One envelope, one memory, one peaceful morning at a time.
The baker's morning loaf. The morning continued to unfold with quiet grace across Pine Hollow. The sun had climbed a little higher now, sending warm streams of golden light through the branches of the towering maple trees. The last traces of dew disappeared from the grassy hillsides. A gentle breeze wandered through the valley, carrying the peaceful scent of pine needles, cedar wood, and something else Arthur recognized immediately: fresh bread. He smiled before he even looked toward the bakery. Every morning, almost without fail, that familiar aroma drifted across Maple Street. Warm flour, golden crust, a touch of butter, a whisper of cinnamon. To Arthur, it smelled like home. Inside the post office, the day had settled into its familiar rhythm. Letters rested neatly inside their wooden boxes. Newspapers waited quietly upon the front counter. The old clock continued its patient work. Tick, tick, tick. Ginger stretched comfortably beneath the front window, where a patch of warm sunlight had slowly moved across the polished wooden floor. The orange cat opened one sleepy eye, then closed it again. Arthur quietly sorted a handful of postcards that had arrived on the early train. One pictured the Rocky Mountains beneath fresh snow. Another showed a sandy beach far away in California. A third carried a painting of brilliant red maple trees beside a peaceful lake. Arthur always enjoyed seeing places he might never visit. Every postcard felt like a tiny window into another quiet corner of the world. Just then, the brass bell above the front door gave its familiar, cheerful ring. Arthur looked up. Standing in the doorway was Thomas Miller, the village baker. Thomas carried a large wicker basket covered neatly with a white linen cloth. He smiled the moment he saw Arthur. "Good morning." "Good morning, Thomas. The ovens have been especially generous today." Arthur chuckled softly. "I could tell before you even arrived." Thomas lifted the corner of the cloth. A wave of warm fragrance filled the little post office. Fresh country bread, golden rolls, soft oatmeal biscuits. The comforting scent drifted gently through every corner of the room. Even Ginger lifted his head with quiet curiosity. Thomas laughed. "I think I have another customer." Arthur smiled. "I'm afraid he's more interested in butter than bread." Both men shared a quiet laugh. Thomas reached carefully into the basket and lifted out a round loaf with a beautifully golden crust. "I baked this one before sunrise."
Arthur accepted it with both hands. The loaf was still wonderfully warm. Its crust crackled ever so softly as he turned it in the morning light. "Thank you." "My pleasure." Thomas looked around the peaceful little post office. "I always enjoy stopping here." Arthur nodded. "It has that effect on people." Thomas smiled thoughtfully. "I think it's because nothing ever feels rushed." Arthur rested the loaf gently upon the counter. "Some things become better when they're given time." Thomas looked toward the rows of wooden mailboxes. "Bread." Arthur smiled. "And letters." Thomas nodded. "Perhaps life itself." For a few peaceful moments, neither man spoke. Outside, the breeze carried another shower of golden leaves along Maple Street. Farther down the road, someone opened a cottage window. The distant sound of a piano floated gently into the autumn air. Only a simple melody, played slowly, without hurry. Thomas listened for a moment. "I wonder who's practicing." Arthur tilted his head. "It sounds like Miss Clara." "The school teacher?" Arthur nodded. "She plays every Tuesday morning." Thomas smiled. "I've heard her many times, but I never knew who it was." Arthur poured 2 small cups of fresh coffee. Steam rose between them. They stood beside the front window, sharing warm bread and coffee while watching the peaceful village continue its gentle morning. Neither conversation nor silence felt more important than the other. Both belonged. After a while, Thomas brushed a few crumbs from his coat. "I should get back. The cinnamon rolls won't sell themselves." Arthur laughed quietly. "I'm quite sure they could." Thomas grinned. "I appreciate your confidence." He gathered the empty basket and walked toward the door. Before stepping outside, he paused. "You know," Arthur looked up, "this little post office reminds me of my bakery." "Oh?" "We don't just give people what they come for." Arthur waited. "We give them something that helps them feel at home." Arthur considered those words, then smiled. "I believe you're right." Thomas tipped his cap. "I'll see you tomorrow morning." "I'll be here." The brass bell rang softly as the door closed behind him. The fragrance of warm bread lingered gently inside the room. Arthur sliced a small piece from the fresh loaf. He placed an even smaller piece onto a tiny saucer beside Ginger. The orange cat sniffed politely before taking a careful bite. Arthur smiled. "I thought you might enjoy that." Outside, the church bell chimed quietly across the valley. Once, twice, 3 times. The morning continued its peaceful journey toward midday. Sunlight moved slowly across the wooden floor. The old clock never hurried. The letters waited patiently. The fresh bread filled the room with quiet comfort. And in the little forgotten post office of Pine Hollow, another ordinary morning became another beautiful memory. Not because anything remarkable had happened, but because kindness, like the scent of fresh bread, often stayed with people long after the moment had quietly passed away. As the clockmaker's visit quietly marked the passing of another hour, the gentle rhythm of Pine Hollow continued without the slightest hurry. The morning sun rested warmly upon the rooftops. Shadows beneath the maple trees had grown a little shorter. The valley seemed wrapped in a peaceful stillness that only small towns could understand. Inside the post office, Arthur Bell carefully folded the morning newspaper after finishing its crossword puzzle. He never rushed through the puzzle. Sometimes he solved only one clue while enjoying an entire cup of coffee. He believed some things were meant to be savored rather than completed. The old wall clock continued its familiar song. Tick, tick, tick. Arthur looked up with a quiet smile. "You've done well again today." The clock, as always, answered only by keeping perfect time. A few moments later, the little brass bell above the front door rang softly. Arthur recognized the visitor before he even looked up. Only one person in Pine Hollow closed the door quite so gently. "Good morning, Walter." Walter Green removed his brown felt hat and smiled warmly. "Good morning, Arthur." Walter was the village clockmaker. His small workshop stood only a few doors away, tucked between the bookstore and the tailor's shop. Nearly every clock in Pine Hollow had passed through his careful hands at least once. He repaired mantel clocks, pocket watches, grandfather clocks, kitchen clocks, and occasionally the tiny wind-up alarm clocks that children proudly kept beside their beds. Walter carried a narrow wooden box beneath one arm. Its polished walnut surface gleamed softly in the morning light. "I thought your old wall clock deserved its yearly inspection." Arthur chuckled quietly. "I believe she was hoping to see you." Walter looked toward the tall clock hanging above the sorting shelves. "She's been working faithfully for many years." Arthur nodded. "And she still keeps everyone on time." Walter carefully placed the wooden box upon the counter. Inside rested tiny screwdrivers, soft cloths, small brass tools, a magnifying lens, and dozens of neatly organized springs and gears. Each tool had its own little place. Nothing appeared out of order. Arthur admired that. There was comfort in careful craftsmanship. Walter climbed a short wooden ladder and gently opened the clock's glass door. The familiar ticking continued without interruption. He listened quietly, not speaking, simply listening. After nearly a full minute, he smiled. "She's very happy." Walter laughed softly. "Can clocks be happy?" Walter climbed down the ladder. "I've always believed they can." Arthur poured 2 fresh cups of coffee. Steam curled gently toward the ceiling. Walter accepted the mug with grateful hands. My father taught me something many years ago. Arthur leaned comfortably against the counter. What was that? Walter looked toward the old clock. He used to say, "A clock doesn't measure life." Arthur waited. It reminds us to notice it. For several peaceful moments, neither man spoke. The ticking quietly filled the room. Tick, tick, tick. Outside, a light breeze stirred the colorful maple leaves. A pair of sparrows landed upon the windowsill before fluttering away again. Walter finished his coffee, then carefully polished the brass pendulum with a soft cloth until it reflected the warm sunlight. There. Arthur looked upward. It seems brighter. Walter smiled. Sometimes all something needs is a little attention. Arthur thought about those words. Perhaps people weren't so different. Sometimes kindness wasn't something grand. Sometimes it was simply remembering to notice someone, to listen, to smile, to ask how their morning had been. Walter packed away his tools one by one. Each returned to its proper place inside the polished wooden box. Before closing the lid, he paused. From a small velvet pouch, he removed a tiny brass key. I almost forgot. Arthur recognized it immediately. The winding key for the post office clock. Walter handed it over carefully. I made a new one. Arthur turned it gently between his fingers. Its polished brass caught the sunlight beautifully. It's lovely. Walter smiled. I thought the old clock deserved something made to last another 50 years. Arthur looked once more at the faithful clock above the shelves, then back at the tiny key resting comfortably in his palm. I believe she'll appreciate it. Walter laughed. I think she already does. The brass bell rang softly as he stepped back onto Maple Street. Arthur stood quietly inside the doorway, watching his old friend disappear beneath the golden maple trees. The breeze continued to whisper. The sunlight continued to move slowly across the wooden floor. The clock continued its patient conversation with time. Tick, tick, tick. Arthur slipped the new brass key carefully into the drawer beneath the counter. Some gifts were valuable because they were expensive. Others because they carried thoughtfulness within them. This one carried both friendship and time. And inside the little forgotten post office of Pine Hollow, both were treasures worth keeping. The last delivery before winter. The autumn sun arose a little later now. Its golden light arrived softly across the valley, taking its time as though it too wished to linger before winter quietly settled over Pine Hollow.
The mornings had grown noticeably cooler. A thin veil of frost rested upon the wooden fences surrounding the nearby farms. The grass sparkled beneath the first light of day. Each blade carried tiny crystals that shimmered for only a few peaceful moments before disappearing into the warmth of the rising sun. Arthur Bell noticed these small changes. He always did. The seasons never announced themselves with great fanfare. They simply whispered. One cool morning, one falling leaf, one quiet sunrise at a time. Inside the little post office, the familiar warmth of the cast-iron stove welcomed Arthur as he unlocked the red door. The brass bell gave its gentle greeting. Ginger stretched comfortably beside the stove, opening sleepy eyes before greeting Arthur with a quiet purr. "Good morning, old friend." The orange cat answered by curling into an even tighter circle, perfectly content beside the comforting warmth. Arthur smiled. "If I were a cat, I believe I'd stay exactly where you are." Outside, Maple Street looked different now. Only a handful of golden leaves still clung to the old maple trees. Most had already completed their gentle journey to the earth below. The sidewalks were lined with soft carpets of amber, crimson, and copper. Each passing breeze lifted a few leaves into the air before quietly laying them back upon the ground once again. Arthur filled a small leather satchel with the morning deliveries. There were fewer letters than usual. Winter always seemed to encourage shorter conversations, but every envelope still carried its own quiet importance. One was addressed to Mrs. Whittemore, another to the Miller family farm. Several would travel beyond the valley before reaching homes hundreds of miles away. Arthur buttoned his heavy wool coat, wrapped his scarf comfortably around his neck, then stepped into the crisp morning air. The village moved more slowly these days. Thin streams of smoke rose peacefully from nearly every chimney. Somewhere nearby, someone split wood fire with careful, steady rhythm. Farther down Maple Street, Thomas Miller carried baskets of fresh bread into the bakery before the morning customers arrived. He noticed Arthur and raised a friendly hand. "Cold enough for gloves today." Arthur smiled. "Almost, but not quite." Thomas laughed softly. "There are only two kinds of people, those who wear gloves too early and those who wait too long." Arthur chuckled. "I've always belonged to the second group." The two friends shared a quiet laugh before continuing their morning routines. Arthur followed the familiar country road toward the farms beyond Pine Hollow. The fields rested peacefully beneath the pale autumn sky. Corn had already been gathered. Apple trees stood nearly bare. Stone walls stretched across the rolling hills, their weathered surfaces warmed gently by the soft morning sunlight. At the Harper farm, Daniel was stacking neatly split oak logs beneath a wooden shelter. Each piece found its place with quiet care. Preparing for winter had never been hurried work. It was simply another way of caring for tomorrow.
Daniel waved as Arthur approached. "Morning." "Morning, Danny." Arthur handed him a small bundle of letters. Daniel smiled. "My sister finally wrote. I've been hoping she would." Arthur nodded gently. Sometimes the best letters take a little longer to arrive. Daniel looked thoughtfully at the envelope before slipping it carefully into his coat pocket. "I think I'll save this one until after supper." Arthur smiled. "That sounds like a fine idea." Some letters deserved an unhurried evening. A warm fire, a comfortable chair, and all the time in the world. Arthur continued along the winding lane. The breeze carried the rich scent of cedar, dry leaves, and distant wood smoke. Above him, a small flock of geese crossed the bright blue sky in their familiar V-shaped formation. They traveled steadily toward warmer places. Arthur watched until they disappeared beyond the southern hills. They always know when it's time. By late morning, the satchel had grown wonderfully light. The final envelope belonged to an elderly couple living at the edge of the valley. Their little white cottage stood beside a weathered red barn. Surrounded by quiet fields, now resting after the harvest. Arthur placed the letter gently inside their mailbox. Before turning away, he paused for one last look across the peaceful countryside. The hills seemed quieter than they had only a few weeks before. The trees stood almost bare. The wind carried a cooler promise. Winter was drawing closer. Not with urgency. Not with noise. Only with patience. Only with grace. The first snow at Pine Hollow. Winter arrived during the quietest hours of the night. There had been no great storm, no restless wind, no thunder rolling across the mountains. Only a peaceful snowfall that drifted gently from the sky while the entire valley slept beneath warm blankets and quiet dreams. When morning slowly found Pine Hollow, the world looked wonderfully different. Every rooftop wore a blanket of fresh white snow. Every fence rail carried a soft, rounded line of sparkling frost. The pine trees stood tall and still, their evergreen branches gently bowing beneath the delicate weight of winter's first gift. The village seemed quieter than Arthur Bell had ever known. Snow had a remarkable way of softening every sound. Even the familiar ticking of time seemed slower somehow. Arthur awoke before sunrise, just as he always had. For a moment, he noticed something unusual. The morning felt brighter. Not warmer, only brighter. He drew back the curtain beside his bed. A quiet smile slowly appeared. "The first snow," he whispered. Outside, tiny snowflakes still drifted lazily through the pale morning sky. not enough to cover the windows, just enough to remind the valley that winter had truly arrived. Arthur dressed a little more warmly than usual. A thick wool sweater, his favorite brown coat, a knitted scarf that Mrs. Whittemore had made many winters before. Leather gloves rested comfortably inside his pockets, though he rarely wore them unless the wind became particularly cold. The kettle soon began its familiar, gentle song. Steam curled upward as fresh coffee filled the little kitchen with its comforting aroma. Arthur stood for a few peaceful moments beside the window, watching the snow continue its slow and graceful dance toward the earth. No two snowflakes seemed to hurry. Each one found its own quiet path. When his coffee was finished, Arthur stepped outside. Fresh snow greeted him with a gentle crunch beneath his boots. Crunch. Pause. Crunch. Pause. The sound was wonderfully soft, almost as though the snow wished not to disturb the morning. The cold air felt crisp and wonderfully clean. It carried the scent of pine, cedar, and distant wood smoke rising from the chimneys scattered throughout Pine Hollow. Every breath felt fresh. Every breath felt peaceful. As Arthur walked toward the post office, he noticed something that made him smile. Tiny footprints. They crossed the porch, circled the front steps, then disappeared around the side of the building. Ginger.
The little orange cat had clearly ventured outside before deciding that the warmth of the stove was a much wiser place to spend the morning. Arthur brushed the fresh snow gently from the porch railing before unlocking the red front door. The familiar brass bell welcomed him with its cheerful little chime. Inside, the warmth embraced him immediately. The cast-iron stove glowed softly. Its gentle fire had been prepared the evening before and only needed a few carefully placed logs to awaken once again. Arthur knelt beside the stove. He added 2 pieces of seasoned oak. Within moments, the flames stretched lazily upward. Golden light flickered across the polished wooden floor. Ginger emerged from behind a stack of mailbags, stretched carefully, and settled once again beside the growing warmth. "You've made the right choice," Arthur said with a quiet laugh. Outside, the snowfall had almost stopped. The clouds slowly drifted apart. Little patches of pale blue sky began to appear above the valley. Sunlight quietly touched the highest pine branches. Almost immediately, the snow began to sparkle. Thousands upon thousands of tiny crystals reflected the morning light. The entire village shimmered as though sprinkled with countless little stars. Arthur stood at the front window. Children would surely be delighted when school finished later that afternoon.
Snowmen would appear. Small sleds would glide gently down the hillside. Warm cocoa would wait in cheerful kitchens. Winter always seemed to invite people home a little earlier than usual, not because they had to, because they wanted to. Far in the distance, the quiet whistle of the morning train floated across the snowy valley, gentler than ever before. The sound seemed to drift through the falling snow instead of above it. Arthur gathered the waiting mailbag and stepped outside once more. Each step left a fresh set of footprints behind him. He paused halfway across Maple Street. For one long, peaceful moment, he simply looked around. The bakery's chimney sent a thin ribbon of smoke into the pale blue sky. Mrs. Whitmore carefully swept the snow from her front porch. Thomas Miller stood outside his bakery, brushing fresh snow from the wooden sign above the entrance. Daniel's horse waited patiently beside the wagon, its breath rising like little clouds into the crisp winter air. Nothing about the village had truly changed, only the season. And somehow, everything felt softer because of it. Arthur smiled quietly. Winter had finally arrived in Pine Hollow. Not with noise, not with hardship, but with gentle beauty. The kind that asked nothing of anyone except to slow down, to breathe deeply, and to notice how peaceful the world could become when wrapped beneath a blanket of fresh, white snow. As he continued toward the station, the snow beneath his boots whispered softly with every careful step. Behind him, a single line of footprints stretched across Maple Street. Ahead of him, another quiet winter morning waited, along with another train, another handful of letters, and another gentle day inside the little forgotten post office that had quietly watched over Pine Hollow through every season of the year. Letters for Christmas. December settled gently over Pine Hollow. Not with hurried shopping, not with crowded streets, not with bright displays that demanded attention. Here, Christmas arrived quietly. One handwritten letter, one glowing window, one kind conversation at a time. The first light of morning spilled softly across the fresh snow, painting the little village in shades of pale gold and gentle blue. Smoke curled peacefully from stone chimneys. Pine branches carried small blankets of snow. The little forgotten post office stood warmly against the winter landscape. Its red door glowed softly beneath the amber lantern that Arthur Bell always lit before sunrise during the Christmas season. Arthur unlocked the front door. The familiar brass bell welcomed another winter morning. Inside, the warmth of the cast-iron stove filled the room. Fresh logs crackled gently. The scent of cedar wood mingled with paper, ink, polished oak, and a hint of cinnamon drifting from the bakery across Maple Street. Ginger stretched beside the fire. one slow stretch, then another, before curling comfortably into the warm rug once again. Arthur smiled.
I think you've discovered the secret to winter. The orange cat answered only with a contented purr. Arthur removed his gloves and looked toward the sorting table. It was already covered with envelopes, far more than usual. Christmas always brought letters from every direction. Some traveled from busy cities, others from quiet farms. Many had crossed mountains and rivers before reaching Pine Hollow. Each envelope looked different. Some carried elegant handwriting. Others were written carefully by children still learning their letters. A few were decorated with tiny drawings of holly leaves, snowflakes, or Christmas trees. Arthur gently picked up the first bundle. He never hurried Christmas mail. Every letter deserved patient hands. Every envelope carried someone's hope. Outside, the village slowly awakened. Church bells rang softly across the snowy valley. Children's laughter drifted through the crisp morning air as they carefully rolled snow into little round shapes for snowmen. From the bakery came the comforting aroma of fresh gingerbread and cinnamon bread. Arthur opened the front window just a little. Cold winter air slipped gently inside, along with the delicious scent of Christmas baking. Only a few minutes later, the brass bell rang once again. Emily stepped inside, carefully brushing tiny snowflakes from her blue wool coat. She held a small bundle of Christmas cards tied together with a bright red ribbon. "Good morning, Mr. Bell." Arthur smiled warmly. "Good morning, Emily. I've made something special." She untied the ribbon with great care. Each Christmas card had been painted by hand. Some showed little robins resting upon snowy branches. Others pictured pine trees beneath bright stars. One showed the little red post office with warm light shining from its windows. Arthur looked at each card slowly. "They're beautiful." Emily smiled shyly. "I wanted everyone to know I was thinking about them." Arthur nodded gently. "I believe they'll know that the moment they open them." He stamped each card with calm, careful hands. Tap. Pine Hollow, December 22nd, 1951. Tap. Tap. The familiar rhythm echoed softly through the peaceful room. Emily closed her eyes for a moment. "I still love that sound." Arthur laughed quietly. "I imagine I always will too."
Before leaving, Emily carefully placed one final envelope on the counter. "This one's for you." Arthur was surprised. "For me?" She nodded. "But don't open it until Christmas morning." Arthur smiled. "I promise." He placed the envelope carefully inside the top drawer of his old oak desk. Some letters could wait. Waiting sometimes made kindness feel even warmer. As the morning continued,
more familiar faces visited the little post office. Mrs. Whittemore arrived carrying a small tin of homemade butter cookies wrapped in a white linen cloth. "I thought these might keep everyone warm." Arthur accepted the gift with grateful hands. "The smell alone is enough." She laughed softly. "I added a little extra vanilla." Not long afterward, Thomas Miller appeared carrying a basket of freshly baked gingerbread. The warm spices filled the room immediately. "Cinnamon," Arthur said with a smile. "And cloves," Thomas replied. "I thought Christmas deserved both." The two friends shared coffee beside the glowing stove as snow drifted gently beyond the front windows. Neither spoke very much. There was no need.
Some friendships were most comfortable in quiet moments. By early afternoon, nearly every Christmas letter had been sorted. Bundles rested neatly inside canvas mailbags, waiting for the evening train. Arthur looked across the room. The little post office felt especially alive today. Not because it was noisy, but because every envelope carried someone's affection. A daughter writing to her parents, a grandfather sending blessings to his grandchildren, old friends remembering one another after many months apart. Simple words, simple paper, yet somehow capable of traveling hundreds of miles to warm someone's heart. Outside, soft snowflakes began to fall once again. Large, slow, silent. Arthur stepped onto the porch for one peaceful moment. Snow settled gently upon his coat. He watched the quiet village breathe beneath the soft winter sky. Christmas was only a few days away. The lights in the cottage windows would soon shine a little brighter.
Families would gather around warm tables. Stories would be shared beside glowing fireplaces. And somewhere, perhaps many miles beyond Pine Hollow, someone would open a letter delivered from this little post office. They would smile, perhaps wipe away a quiet tear, perhaps simply whisper, "They remembered me." Arthur closed his eyes for one slow breath. Cold winter air filled his lungs. The scent of pine, fresh snow, wood smoke, warm bread, everything that made Pine Hollow feel like home. He opened his eyes again. The amber lantern beside the red door glowed softly against the snowy afternoon. Its warm light seemed to promise that no matter how cold the season became, kindness would always find its way. One letter, one friendship, one quiet Christmas at this little post office at a time. The light that always stayed on. Christmas Eve arrived with the quiet certainty of an old friend. Before the first light touched the snowy rooftops of Pine Hollow, before the baker opened his ovens,
before the church bell welcomed the day, the little post office was already glowing with a warm amber light. Arthur Bell unlocked the familiar red door just as he had done thousands of mornings before. The brass bell offered its gentle greeting. It sounded no different than it had 40 years ago. Arthur smiled. Some beautiful things, he thought, never needed to change. Inside, the cast-iron stove quietly warmed the room. The scent of cedar logs mixed with paper, polished wood, fresh coffee, and the faint sweetness of gingerbread that still lingered from the day before. Ginger lifted his head from the woven rug beside the fire. He blinked once, then settled comfortably back into his favorite place. Outside, fresh snow rested peacefully across the valley. No wind disturbed it. No hurried footsteps crossed Maple Street. Only the first pale colors of dawn slowly painted the eastern sky. Arthur prepared the final Christmas mail. There were fewer letters than yesterday. Only a small bundle remained.
He picked up each envelope with the same careful hands that had sorted countless thousands before. Every address received one final glance. Every stamp rested perfectly in its place. Every letter carried a quiet promise. Someone, somewhere, would soon smile.
As the morning gently unfolded, familiar faces arrived one by one. Mrs. Whitmore stopped by with a tiny evergreen wreath tied with a simple red ribbon. "I thought your front door deserved a little Christmas." Arthur accepted it with a grateful smile. It couldn't have come from kinder hands. Thomas Miller delivered one final loaf of warm bread, still fresh from the oven. The crust crackled softly in the cool winter air. "For supper," he said. Arthur nodded. "I'll think of the bakery with every slice." Emily arrived last. She wore the same blue wool coat, now dusted with tiny snowflakes. She smiled brightly. "Merry Christmas, Mr. Bell." "Merry Christmas, Emily." She looked around the peaceful post office. "I think this is my favorite place in Pine Hollow." Arthur looked quietly towards the rows of wooden mailboxes. "I've always felt rather lucky to spend my days here." Emily reached into her pocket. She removed a tiny silver bell, no larger than a walnut. "My father made this. I wanted you to have it." Arthur held the little bell carefully. It was beautifully simple. When he gently shook it, it answered with the softest chime. Not loud, not bright, only gentle. Just like Pine Hollow itself. "Thank you, Emily. I'll treasure it." She smiled. "I hoped you would." Soon afterward, the morning train arrived beneath a clear winter blue. Samuel Hayes stepped down from the locomotive with his familiar smile.
together, without hurry. The two old friends exchanged the final Christmas mailbags of the season. Steam drifted peacefully into the crisp December air. The whistle sounded once, long, low, comforting. Arthur watched until the train disappeared beyond the snow-covered pines. He knew it was carrying more than letters. It carried memories, hope, kind words, forgiveness, laughter, love, simple things, perhaps, yet often the things people remembered most. The day passed quietly. Neighbors greeted one another with warm smiles. Church bells echoed gently across the snowy valley. Children laughed while pulling little wooden sleds through fresh snow. The bakery windows glowed with golden light. Smoke rose peacefully from every chimney. As evening slowly arrived, the sky turned shades of lavender, silver, and deep blue. One by one, stars appeared above the quiet mountains. Arthur returned to the post office one final time that day. The room had grown wonderfully still. The last letters had already begun their journeys. The sorting table stood neatly arranged. The old ledger rested closed upon the desk. The faithful wall clock continued its patient rhythm. Tick, tick, tick. Arthur walked slowly through the room. His fingertips brushed gently across the polished oak counter. The familiar mailboxes, the worn brass scale, the smooth wooden shelves. Each carried decades of quiet service. Each held memories too numerous to count. He knelt beside Ginger one last time. The orange cat purred softly beneath Arthur's gentle hand. "You've been very good company." Ginger answered by closing his eyes. Arthur stood. He placed another log upon the glowing fire. Not because it was needed, simply because warmth should always be ready to welcome whoever might enter. He carefully put on his coat, wrapped his scarf, buttoned every button against the winter evening. Then, he reached for the old brass key, the same key that had opened and closed the little forgotten post office for more years than anyone could easily remember. He stepped outside. Fresh snow sparkled beneath the starlight. The village rested peacefully. Families gathered inside warm homes. Soft laughter drifted through frosted windows. Somewhere nearby, someone quietly played a Christmas hymn on an old piano. Arthur gently closed the red front door. The brass lock turned with one familiar click. Not an ending, simply another peaceful evening. Before walking home, he paused beside the lantern hanging next to the entrance. Its flame burned softly behind the glass, warm, steady, faithful. Arthur adjusted the wick just a little. The light became brighter. Not enough to fill the street, only enough to brighten the little wooden steps leading to the door. He smiled. For as long as anyone in Pine Hollow could remember, the post office lantern had always remained lit through Christmas Eve. No one had ever written the tradition down. No one had ever explained it. It was simply something that had always been done. Arthur believed every town needed one quiet light that stayed awake while everyone else slept. A light that asked for nothing, expected nothing, simply waited, patiently, for whoever might need to see it. He looked once toward the snowy mountains, then toward the peaceful village he had loved for nearly a lifetime. The wind moved gently through the pine trees.
The stars shimmered above the valley. Far away, very far away, the faint whistle of the evening train drifted through the winter night. Arthur tipped his hat, then began the slow walk home. Behind him, the lantern continued to glow. Its warm light reached only a few quiet steps into the darkness. Yet somehow, it made the whole little post office feel alive. Perhaps that was the nature of kindness. It did not need to reach everywhere. It only needed to reach someone. And somewhere beyond the mountains, a child would soon open a Christmas card. A grandmother would unfold a familiar letter. An old friend would smile at handwriting they had not seen in many years. Simple moments, simple words, quiet reminders that no distance was ever too great for a thoughtful heart. Above Pine Hollow, snow rested peacefully upon the rooftops. The church stood silent beneath the stars. The creek flowed gently beneath its little wooden bridge. The pine trees whispered softly into the winter night. And beside the little forgotten post office, the lantern remained faithfully aglow, warm, steady, always waiting, as though quietly reminding every traveler, every dreamer, and every listening soul that somewhere, someone was thinking of them. The valley grew still. The fire burned low. The clock continued its gentle song. Tick, tick, tick. Then even those quiet sounds seemed to drift softly into the peaceful winter night, and Pine Hollow, wrapped safely beneath snow, stars, and kindness, slept peacefully until morning.